So when you get a set of images from us after you're done assembling the file and getting ready to look at them in full, what you'll notice is that there's a bunch of flagged images, usually somewhere between 150 and 200 flagged images. These flags indicate that they need further Photoshop editing, not further Lightroom editing. It's important to understand what our base editors do and what their job is, so that you know what your job is from this point forward. So our base editor is in charge of basically adjusting the image overall. So what they're doing is they're getting the overall exposure, the overall color balance, the overall straightening, and the overall cropping done. So they're going through and they're making sure that any of those four things are correct. What your job is to take it one step further and get more brush adjustments done, double check cropping, double check color, double check the image in general. So when you get these flags, what happens is that we've already gone through the images and we found that there is something wrong with them. The something that could be wrong could be anything from your crop to your color, to your exposure, brush, anything. And so what you want to do is go through the images and take a look at them and try to fix them up as best as you see they need to be fixed up. So just looking at these images right here, what you're going to see a lot of is a lot of spot or brush adjustments on the dress. That means exposure adjustment to bring the exposure on the dress down. These are generally just to bring the detail back into the dress that doesn't currently exist because it was overexposed in the first place. So if you take a look at this image right here, number one, this image appears to me to be slightly overexposed. So if we take a look at this at 0.4, we'll bring the image's exposure down to maybe, like, let's say a 0.18, which is already going to bring detail back into the dress. But then we may just grab this brush here and grab the exposure, and with a 0.30 or so, just kind of go in and brush the detail back into the dress. Make one swipe at it and another swipe, and that'll bring the exposure back on the dress. The other thing that I would notice about this image is that the crop is fine, but there's this little spot here, this bright red thing catching my attention, so I would use the spot adjustment tool or the spot removal tool to go in here and remove this red fire alarm off the wall. Other than that, this image is fine, and you can move on to the next image. As you're going through and looking at this image, for example, what you'll see is that, again, first be looking at the frame. Is it straight? Is it cropped correctly? There's really no need to have the door frame in this photo if we can avoid it, so we'll try to pull back a little bit, show a little less of the door frame if possible, and as long as it doesn't lose the overall look of the image. So we remove the door frame, good. And what we're going to do here is then look at, is the color correct? Well, we'll have to take a look by hitting the tie real quick, try to find out if we've got good color. Try to find a gray spot in there. It seems like it's a little cool, little blue, so we might just come in here and give it a little bit of an orange bump. And then, so the color is good, the crop is good. I may come back a little bit. It seems like his face is getting a little red. The color is good, the crop is good. Now we have to look at spot exposure. Is spot exposure good? Well, he's got a little bit of a bright spot on his arm here, and you can't see anything of this detail here. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a real quick negative 0.4 spot adjustment here, and the same thing over here. And I'm going to give it a second one and add a little bit of clarity. And come in here and just hit it again. And that's going to bring a little bit more detail into the point of the photo that's here. As I look at this image, I still see he's a little red in the face. So I'm going to scroll down here to the red saturation, and I'm going to pull it back a little bit. That's going to make his face appear a little less red. And what we can also do is we can also come in here and leave the saturation the way we want, leave it flat 0, but also change the red hue and move the red into more of an orange hue. This is going to straighten out the color in his face just a little bit so it's not as red. Okay? So to me this image is done, and if I was really having a lot of trouble with the color on his face matching everything, I might come in here and I might make it black and white just to save everything. So on these 2-star images, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look at the rating is equal to 2-star. On the 2-star images, your job is to simply get the exposure correct, get all this stuff correct so the image is correct. And that's indicated here on this, the key to edit. Anything with a 2-star and a flag is the base edited images that require further corrections. That is brushing, any kind of spot removal, nothing major. We don't do a lot of spot removal to the face. We really just kind of spend a lot of our time just getting the exposure. You can see how bright this is over here. We would come in here and just use a quick exposure brush to kind of go in here and clean this up a little bit so it isn't so bright. Very, very bright. And then also, because it's so bright and because it's a TV there, I might come in here and just crop this tighter. Okay? and that would also eliminate the red thing in the background there. And so then I might just come over here with a little bit more of an exposure drop, and this was obviously too much at 1.52, so I'll come off of it like this. Okay? And so this image would be, the other thing I'm noticing on this image is a little flat. There's no real contrast in our skin tone, so I might come in here and add a little bit of contrast. And by adding contrast, we lost a little bit of detail in the dress, so we're going to come in here and just kind of whack in with a 0.32, just a little bit more detail in the dress. Okay? And then, you know, so these are the images that really just need kind of an adjustment on a spot level, on a smaller level, making sure the exposure, the crop, the straightening, and the color balance are all correct. Okay? If you look at the 3-star images, these images are actually going to be images that we're going to want to use in our blog and our portfolio. These images actually may be pretty close to being done, and what we want to do here is just really make sure that they're done. Go in and really spend some time making the spot adjustments where they need to be. When I look at this image, this is really cute. I'm going to go through and drop the exposure just a little bit, just to make sure that I've got the exposure correct. I'm getting a lot of blowout from this light here, so I'm going to kind of bring back a little bit of an exposure adjustment here. And then what's happening is I'm getting a lot of mixing light in here. I'm getting a lot of this. This is the correct tone of light on his skin, but in the background it's very blue. So I'm going to go back here and pull some of the saturation out of the blue. This is going to help me get a little bit of a better image, but as you notice here, this made her skin look a little gray. So I'm going to come back in and change that over so that she's getting a little bit of a better color on her skin. And actually, I may just go back and zero out the blue, just because I really don't want her to lose any pigmentation on her skin, and I'll come in here and I'll go with a brush saturation, a brush desaturation, and see if that doesn't help a little bit. We try to pull some of the blue out of the background there. And I think that looks pretty good there. And then I'm just going to do a real quick double check of the straightening. Try to straighten that up again so these lines are straight in the background. And then this image is pretty good. This image can go forward and become one of our blog images. We'll go over here to this image right here. This is an image of the bride and groom. And again, this is going to be something I want to put on our blog. So we might take the little extra time to do something simple like remove this little spot right here. Something like this could just be a little bit of a distraction. If you notice it, chances are it's going to be distracting to somebody else. So just taking the few seconds it takes to remove it makes it a little bit better. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to pop in here and try to apply some of these presets to these photos to try to give them a little bit more pop. As you can see, just a real quick adjustment there made it look a lot better. We're going to go ahead with the exposure and a small exposure brush adjustment here at 0.11. Just to make sure the dress didn't lose any detail. But just that little punch to 65 fastback made this look a lot better. Her skin tone was really pretty. His skin tone is better. And this 3-star image is ready to go to blog. Same thing in here. And now that you've done it here, you kind of have to do the same thing here. Hit it with a little bit of a 65 fastback. And we can get you these presets. Just let us know that you need them and we'll send them over to you. We hit it with a little 65 fastback, and then again coming in here and adjusting this right here. Okay. Very, very quick changes. We're not doing any skin changing, no skin nothing. We're just kind of going in here and cleaning these photos up so that they look really, really pretty perfect. And again, I'm going to hit it with a little 65 fastback. It pumped the punchiness of the color, and we really like it that way as well. And that may be one of the things that you do to a lot of these images. You see here, this image is pretty good, but if you hit it with a little 65 fastback, all of a sudden skin tone change is very, very clean and pretty. So in a lot of cases, that is what we're doing. We're going into these 3-star images and we're hitting them with a little bit of a 65 fastback. This is giving us the color that we need. If it's a real close-up like this, I'll actually do a little bit of skin softening. It really is a photo very focused on her face. And I won't do a full 100% clarity, declarity. I'll do like a 70%, and it's going to give it a nice skin tone. This photo right here, a little white on the edges. I might add a little bit of a vignette just to kind of pull in the focus back to the bride and groom. There we go, right there. And I'm seeing a really, really too smooth on her face at 77, so I'm going to drop this back to negative 60. Okay. And then this spot right here, again, just a quick, and you'll see here how only in a few minutes we can get this photo right to where we need it to be. And that looks solid. And this one as well. So I love all the adjustments we made to this one. I'm going to copy them out, except for anything from spot removal, crop, and any local adjustments. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to move it right forward and see if this image can look about the same. Beautiful. and this will bring me back to where I'm going to end up doing some spot adjustment on the exposure. Perfect. And then this image and this image are very similar, so we're going to take this image, copy the settings, and then paste them right over. Update the crop a little bit. And then again, go over here with a little bit of exposure adjustment. Okay. We're not killing ourselves with these images. We're just taking the time to get them the way they're supposed to be. They're pretty close usually. Again, we're going to come in here with the 3-star, hit it with a 65 fastback, bring the exposure down just a little bit on the overall image. Come in here with an exposure brush, hit her dress, and maybe follow that through so we can darken up this a little bit. Also come across the top here and try to bring the exposure down a little bit on the top because it's really bright. And one other thing we can do here is that since we have a blue background here, rather than trying to brush this background, what we can do is we can actually change the luminance of the coloring. So we're going to come in here and pull back the blue, and then what you can do is then you can saturate it, and it'll bring some of that color back into the blues there, and you really don't have to worry about going in and brushing that in. And since the blue got a little bit of saturation, we'll add a little saturation of the green. That's going to help to bring the grass out a little bit to make it look a little bit better. But again, once this image gets to about this point, it's pretty much done. And so you're going to go through these 3-star images and kind of give them that same kind of pop. Kind of look at them, hit them with a little 65 fastback, see what that looks like. Generally speaking, it's going to make you required to do a little bit of an exposure adjustment here on the image, spot adjustment in the image. But go through and do the adjustments on each one of these 3-star images because these are the ones that we're going to want to use in our blog. Okay? So this is what we do with the 3-star images. Now moving forward, we're going to be looking at the red images, the blue, and the yellow. So any one of these that are tagged with a red, yellow, or blue in the 2-star or 3-star area. So we're going to go rating is equal to or greater than 2-star. And we're going to take a look for red images. Red images are images that were missed by the editor. In other words, our editor didn't include these images, but they were absolutely necessary for what we're doing. So these images right here are going to need at least even a base level of editing. They haven't even been edited yet. So what we're going to do is maybe hit these with a 65 fastback and see what that looks like. It's kind of an out of focus image, so we may actually have to toss this one. I'm going to hit 0 and pop it off the list and stick with this next one. I think we probably had to have this one with a 65 fastback and try to pull back on the detail. It's kind of out of focus. So, but in this particular case, it's an image that they need to have. Even if it's a little out of focus, they need to have it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come back on it and maybe crop the guy out of it. This image is really tough because it is out of focus, but maybe we'll throw a bunch of sharpening on it and see if the image improves itself. It's getting a little better, a little sharper. Okay, so we want to do that, and then the same thing here with this image, where this was an image that was kept out for some reason, missed by the editor. We just have to go through and give it at least the base level of adjustment. Hit it with a little fastback, bring the exposure down on it in general, and then this image is pretty well to go. So these were the red images that were missed by the editor. The blue images, anything in blue, needs to be converted to black and white. There doesn't seem to be any of these here. But what we do is we use a cream tone. Let's just assume this one wanted to be black and white. We use a cream tone color process that gives us a nice, smooth black and white image. We'll take the cream tone and then we'll bring it back a little bit to make sure that it's not overexposed. We'll make a little bit of adjustments in the lights and the shadows to make this a real, actual black and white image. And then maybe a quick exposure adjustment over here on the right side where her face is a little bit overexposed. Okay? And that's what we do to make an image black and white, and if they're tagged blue, that means we're looking for them to be in black and white. And the last one to look at here is the yellow. If you see anything that's in yellow, basically what yellow is supposed to indicate is that it's going to need obvious Photoshop work. What that means is that we're going to send it to the Photoshopper and have him do the Photoshop work to it, but what you need to do is make sure that everything but the Photoshop stuff is done. In other words, with this image right here, we may want them to Photoshop who knows what. A whole bunch of stuff that could be Photoshopped here. And but for you want to go in here and kind of adjust the exposure on these images to make sure that, you know, the spot adjustment and the exposure is all very consistent between these images, because this is going to go to the Photoshopper and he's going to have to match in people's faces to these images. I'm sure this is what we're doing, is going to take these 5 images and merge them to make one image of everybody's faces looking. So what we want to do is make sure that these images are all very, very consistent. If you look at her dress is darker on this image than in this one and this one, so we'll want to make that correction on those images. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here when we get to a yellow image. But basically, when you're all said and done, you should have gone through all the images in a different way, but essentially the same thing is going to apply. Spot exposure, spot any kind of spot adjustments to remove things from the background that are really distracting. The third thing we're looking for is color, making sure the color correction is good, and then also that the crop and straightening is good, that we're not including too much in these areas. And also keeping in mind one other thing, and that is that we're photographers, and it's really important for us to use a rule of thirds. And so when we're looking at photos, we may find that the crop is just off the rule of thirds. Like you'll notice here that there's people in the third of the image, and this is it here as well. But if you notice any image that doesn't show them in the thirds, kind of puts them in an odd spot in the frame, you'll notice this is in the third. We try to do it all the time, but if you see something where they're not quite in the third, go ahead and make that adjustment to the crop and bring them back into the third of the frame. Again, keeping the aspect ratio the same, so we're not losing anything. Okay, that's the editing process.